Hi, everyone. All right. Good evening. I am Hazel. I use they, them pronouns. I am the programming assistant at ArtSpace, and I'll be facilitating the event tonight. I want to welcome everyone on behalf of ArtSpace. Um, Before we get started with Sarah Lewis's performance, I just want to respectfully acknowledge that both ArtSpace and myself are located on the traditional territory of the Anishnaabe First Nation within the boundaries of Nkojuonong. So tonight we are kicking off Book and Zine Fest with a spoken word performance from Sarah Lewis, our first poet laureate here in Nkojuonong, Peterborough. Sarah is a critically lauded artist who's been covered by the CBC, and she's made the semifinals of the 2019 Canadian Festival of Spoken Word. So, needless to say, I'm really excited to have her speaking here. There's also going to be a Q&A session interview after Sarah's performance. So please, if you have questions for her, I encourage you to drop them in the chat when she's finished. But for now, I will hand things over to Sarah. Take it away.
Hi. Sorry about that. I was just some people having difficulties getting the Zoom link. So I was trying to send them that, or like it's showing up as like that asking them if they want to be a panelist. Um, so just bear with me. Okay, well, for now, I'm just going to send the registration again, and maybe they can just register through that way. Anyways, okay. Welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this show, and I'm super happy that it's going to be recorded as well. Today is very snowy out, so I'm glad that at least we can gather here through Zoom. It also happens to be my birthday, so I'm very happy that, yeah, I can end the day off with some poetry and with some community. So welcome. Yeah, I'm just gonna jump right into it because I have a lot of new poems that I want to share. Just a heads up, or in terms of trigger warnings, I do talk a lot about. I talk about addiction. There is mild mention of sexual assault, but nothing too in detail at all. It's just a poem in dedication to missing and murdered Indigenous women, but nothing too specific. And I also just talk about residential schools and colonization. So a lot of my work is based around that, and that's actually how I got into poetry. I use it as a form of activism, and that's what really drew me into it. So you'll hear a lot of poetry that has to do with the effects of colonization, but what I like to do is sort of bring in that empowerment piece back and talk about the reconciliation pieces, or talk about how Indigenous people are reclaiming their identities and sovereignty and their culture, and we're all bringing it all back. So that's what my work is mainly about. I also have some poems, some love poems, and some poems about nature and womanhood. So yeah, I'm just gonna get into it. I always trying to think. It's always hard to pick the first one, like how I want to start it off. I'll start off with a new poem, a newer poem that I recently made. So this poem is called Bluebird. And I wrote it as I was sitting at my desk, working my day job and daydreaming about the mountains and how much I miss them and love them. And yeah, anyways, this is what came out of that. I forgot to breathe. I held my breath, waiting for my own approval, made myself sick with grief for a person I missed so dearly. The child in me had forgotten how to play. I see those emails peeking out of my inbox like a big red flag I can't ignore, but I keep going back to the boy who keeps calling and apologizing, the deadline, the 9 to 5, the bills, the event I sent my regrets to, the angry scheduler that loves to label me procrastinator. I hate her. So today, I smile and I wave. Finally took a deep breath and exhaled expectations I'll never meet. I skipped to the garden, middle fingers in air and fate in hands. Natural law and self-sufficiency were replaced with an angry accountant. Tells me this way of life isn't adding up, and I agree. He looks confused. The same look I've had until this very moment. I tell him I'm done with the abuse. I tell him that the spreadsheets in the office desks have replaced my mountain view, my place of ceremony, the meadow I make love in, so they gots to go. When did the newest version of the DSM replace books of poetry and watercolored portraits? I don't have depression. I've been robbed of my sanity, spirituality, creativity. My abuser stole my paintbrush and filled my hands in time with deadlines and worry and called me successful. Today, rest is considered a luxury if self-care isn't written in policy from the big wigs who are in charge of the cards at the big table, convinces us we are small, that we must deal with the cards we are dealt, but I'm sick of this game, and I call your bluff. Stuck in this rat race when I'm a bird, caged to colonial concepts, but the key to the valley has always been there, is dangling at my window, Bluebird. Shall we fly to the mountains? Fly to the evergreen trees that do not obsess and sweat about a to-do list. All it does is exist, and that is enough. It was the greedy man who told her otherwise amongst the chains and saws who will cut her down and then turn her into a book about the harms of deforestation and self-care. You see, this way of life doesn't make sense to me, Bluebird. I don't trust them. The wilderness has never asked me to behave, thrown me in a cage, but has taught me that I don't need to conform. Hair adorned with not flowers, but twigs, sap vines, mud and thorns, protesting in bulrushes, thick with brush, water and mosquitoes, humming the fury of 1,000 silent tribes. Colonization brings me to my knees every time. On hands and knees, tells me to pray, tells me their God will fix all the bad, taking the responsibility away from them. But I will never pray to your God. My God is of elements. The rivers always knew I was worthy, so that is where I lay, where I pray, where I slay. I'm a firecracker, so burning out isn't an option. You see, the youth need me. Bluebird needs me. So tonight, I travel with her. We sing our songs. Here, we can simply be. Here, anxiety no longer fills the cracks of my teeth. Here, my jaw softens and is filled with wild berries, nuts, and poems. This is your reminder to breathe, to rest, to put down your phone, your lists. This is your call to inaction, because the mountains, valleys, and rivers miss you, have been waiting for you. Bluebird misses you and is waiting for you. So that is my first poem. Yeah, I think that's a good poem to start the show off with. Like I said, I do, some of it is very political. Most of it is very political. But that's just how I get my activism out there. And I think, or I always say that it's bringing up those uncomfortable things and things that we don't talk about that's going to create change. And this poem actually speaks to that. I might as well share this next one. It's actually called Uncomfortable. This is one of the poems that I shared. Well, actually, I shared both of these poems at the Black Lives Matter blowout event. And yeah, it was kind of in response to someone who made a comment about poetry. And like, I think a lot of the times people, they think poetry like is one, it's black and white, like that you talk about butterflies and rainbows and flowers, but that's not necessarily true. And spoken word has no rules. You can talk about anything. And there is a reason that it is so political, and that people who are often oppressed, those are the people that you'll find behind the mic and doing spoken word. So anyways, this poem speaks to that. And this one is called Uncomfortable. Take out your earplugs, take off your fur golden robes and rose-colored glasses, because change never happened in rooms of comfort. Do I make you uncomfortable with my lack of butterfly flower power, whispers in the wind, Shakespearean poetry? My breath is poetry, my body is poetry, my existence is poetry. Instead, I'm the howling hurricane, smashing your doors down, demanding you rebuild them and open them up to more people who look like me. Metaphors about empty pockets and aching voices demanding justice don't interest you, do they? Does a headline about a thriving economy interest you more than a pipeline protest? Another water protector arrested and jailed for trying to save you. Imagine that. Poems about white picket fences are prettier than the barbed wired ones my people are used to. Does being faced with the idea that a woman of color could be the face you see in your news feed, newspaper articles splashed with brown on white paper, make you uncomfortable? Breaking news. This is not news to me. How about when I say the word fuck, and not as a verb or with you, but to express that it fucking hurts to see the world burn, youth yearning for their future that isn't of flames and famine, hungry for your attention. And pardon my language, but mine was taken away. Your actions contradict what you say. Land acknowledgements cannot be traded for extraction permits. Are my words salty? Are they hard to swallow? Would you like a drink of water, perhaps something to balance out your poor taste in what you protest? I'm tantalized by your rebuttals to justify genocide. It's happened everywhere on every continent, you say, as if that makes it okay, as if the ways of the olden days were best, and I can practically see the Confederate flag tattooed across your chest. As if our people don't have rights, as if our land doesn't have rights. And I see they've brainwashed you too. And really, I feel more sorry for you. But like the sage I burn, I rise to the occasion over your woolly eyes and pray that you never have to see what I've seen. I pray that you never have to have a child taken away. I pray that you never have to pay the cost of pigment that doesn't match an imaginary chart of rights. I pray that you become educated on our lives, that you can see that speaking our stories are revolutionary. Resisting and existing in a time where my story wasn't supposed to exist is revolutionary. We've listened to you, we've heard your cries, your white guilt, the epitome of your pity for not me, but you, so I'll tell you this. Comfort is the least of my worries. We've been uncomfortable in our own bodies for 500 years, buried underneath Confederate statues, buried not underneath sycamores and pines, but pipelines, our eyes burning, uncomfortable from frontline tear gas attacks, still not as painful as not being able to see a future for your own children. So now I think it's your turn to listen. Take a seat. It's time for change. It's time to get uncomfortable. So, yeah, thank you. That one was made when I was in quite of a rage, but I think it's good. Like, that's honestly poetry has really been a lifesaver for me. As crazy as that sounds, like when I first was introduced to poetry, I heard it spoken at a workshop from an Indigenous man who was from like the downtown east side of Vancouver, and his story just resonated with me so much. Like the way he spoke, like the things that he's seen on reservations and like in the city, and like his own experiences with addiction and that intergenerational trauma that comes with colonization. I think it just moved me so much, and I was like, I got to do this. And like this year has been crazy already, and it's only March. So my father is recently deceased and he passed away from cancer actually in January. And that changed my whole world and like switched everything, all my plans. So yeah, I wrote this poem in dedication to my dad. It's called My Father's Medicine. I boil the water from my Zichagan Wigis and Labrador tea. My throat aches, the words struggling to escape, and if they could, they tell me to take care of myself. You would tell me to slow down and to take care of myself, take care of myself, take care of yourself, Sarah. I thought of you today, like I do every day. When the radio comes on, when I walk by the grapefruits in the grocery store, when I hear anything about politics, when I see a little girl holding her father's hand, when I hear the word cancer, when I wake up, when I go to sleep, when I breathe. I stir the medicines in my cup, the medicines he left behind. I think about how your hands once cusped these shiny glass jars, cusping the timer in the other hand, juggling the two, not knowing the clock had already been 2:15 too late, cusping my arm, telling me I've been so strong throughout all of this. Oh, how I wish that was true. Oh, how I'm tired of being strong. But even after my dad is gone, has returned to his natural state, his natural place with the rat roots, the leafy Labrador, the red elm, the tree barks, the traditional medicines he gathered. He continues to heal, continues to be medicine for his family. When my dad got sick, he used to tell me to leave the porch light on. As he lay there, as his spirit's light was beginning to reflect inward, I think he was scared of the darkness, of the end. So I would leave the light on, holding on to every moment spent together until my arms ached, my head hurt from replaying all of the memories Dad taught me, how to ride a bike, how to swim, that really the thoughts in your head are scarier than the monsters underneath your bed, Dad taught me. That all you have is your health. Wealth is measured by your capacity to give and receive love. He told me that the only thing you should take is notes. And now after he is gone, he continues to teach me how to love myself, to keep rising and to stay steady in a storm, even after your sails torn, your anchor, your rock is taken away. My rock was taken away, he taught me. To be aware of your time here on this earth, the things you do and say in that time. Were they kind? Did you treat your body with love? Did you nourish your mind with good thoughts? Watching him in his final days, he taught me that every minute counts. And if you're not, you're going to wish you had. That's one thing you can count on. He taught me that even after our physical form has left us, love remains. Love is the last thing you see, smell, feel, hear at that bed. And so you better make sure love precedes your regret. He taught me a strength I never knew I had. To walk this journey without my dad was the final and most difficult lesson he left with me. And as he took his final journey to the spirit world, where darkness is not to be feared, because you are the light, you are my light. So I sip my medicine tea. With each gulp, I wonder if you're thinking of me too, staring out the window from the house and home you created, at the deck you built, up at the stars where you now sit. And in case you want to stop in for a visit too, I'll leave the porch light on for you. So that was a hard one to write, if I'm being honest. Yeah, like when I wrote a poem for him when he was going through the battle of cancer, and I think I had a lot of anger and rage towards the medical system, and I feel like that's the space, the headspace I was coming from, and I don't think it really was a true representation of how I felt towards my dad. So I'm really grateful that I waited a little bit and was able to write that in honor of him, because yeah, as much anger as I have, I think that all I can think when I think of him now, all I think is like pure love and like that he's always here with me. So this next poem is called Divine Woman. And yeah, it's just in honor of women, womanhood. And speaking of that, International Women's Day is tomorrow. So yeah, there's going to be an event that I will speak at tomorrow, an event hosted by Fourth World Issue Center and Fourth Sexual Assault Center. So I'm not too sure if you follow any of them on social media, but you can find it on the website as well. Yeah, so this poem was in dedication of women. Divine woman, rest your weary eyes and worries, set them aside, woman, for an older version of yourself to worry about. You are welcome to step off the pedestal they have placed you on. Breathe, release the tension in your shoulders, neck, back. The battles will always be there, so unclench your fists and place hands in prayer pose. And thank yourself for how hard you have worked to get here to this moment. Divine woman, my kind of woman, working so hard to love herself after decades of unsolicited advice, woman who is called every objectifying name in the book, but returns the book to its owner, has never been much of a fiction reader, woman, divine woman. Beautiful mind, woman, not a forget-me-not, but a woman you remember. She is the whole fire, not just the embers kind of woman. Loud woman, not a fembot plot twist and bend for you fantasy, living to appease the male gaze, lying naked underneath willow tree. Docile, sweet, submissive, whispering, never yelling, cooking, never burning bridges. Expected to do it all, woman. But she doesn't feel full off these capitalist calories. She has a hunger for community, for connection, was born in a system that fed her lies. She is a more than enough woman. They gave her a manual on how to be a good, real woman, yet they want to pluck and wax off all her realness, put her on a diet, tone her voice down, but she knows she's a goddess, and no goddess would dare remove parts of herself, make herself less. Her body's cells are derived from pre-colonial contact, cannot be owned or told what to do. Her parts are not a reference point for abuse or patriarchal profit. She's a prophet of poetry, of self-love, of raging against the system that covers her breast as if it exposed its secrets, makes them uncomfortable, seeing it in a baby's mouth, but not if it's wrapped in Victoria's Secret. Divine woman knows that to heal from the patriarchal melting pot is to get out of the pot, is to stir the pot, knows that it is not enough to say sorry or not all men. It is to unlearn sexism rooted in colonialism, is to provide reparations, to love our women, to respect all women. That's trans women, gay women, straight women, fat women, skinny women, loud women, quiet women, masculine women, sexual women, asexual women, not your women, Black women, Indigenous women, to acknowledge your existence is because of women. This is for the women who want to have kids, the women who don't, the married women, the women who won't, the poly women, working moms, moms that don't work, the women who wear makeup, and the ones that have made up their minds that their freckles are too fine to cover. Not hard to find woman, because she's listening to this poem right now. I see you, divine woman. And so please stop placing her on a pedestal. She will always desecrate it, set it to flame. She exists to exist and doesn't need to make it pretty. She isn't merely a vibe, but a whole frequency that radiates love, womanhood, and divinity. So yeah, that's my woman poem. My poem dedicated to women. I have so many amazing women in my life, and so many aunties, so many cousins, so many sisters and best friends. I really wanted to like encapsulate all of them. Like even in the community, there's so many amazing women and people, and like I don't have enough words to even encapsulate that, but that's what came out. Yeah, I love writing about that empowerment, and yeah, just the how how incredible we all are. So I am going to I read this poem. I'm gonna share a throwback. This one is like one of the first poems that I wrote and performed. So yeah, this is my older work, but yeah, I read it the other day, and it's crazy how much my writing has evolved, but it's still pretty badass, and it kind of goes in line with womanhood, but more specifically indigenous women. So this one is modern day Pocahontas. My ex-boyfriend used to tell me that I looked like Pocahontas. His parents would joke and say that he was John Smith and I was the Disney princess. And I'd tell them rape and abduction are not something to be joked about, and they'd tell me to lighten up. Counting the times I've had to lighten up a candle at a vigil for one of my stolen sisters. You see girls dress up as Pocahontas, feathers and hair, wore paint on face, but do not actually have to face what it is like to be an Indigenous woman on a day-to-day basis. So you only want to be me when it's Halloween. And the drunken men at the bar call me exotic looking, as though that's a compliment, as though I'm a check mark off their bucket list, as though me and my ancestors weren't here first. Breathe. I ground myself. Imagine my legs, the trunks of black spruce trees deeply rooted in my homeland. And while our melanin is the same, our stories are different. Pocahontas was Powhatan, was a child when she was abducted and assaulted by an Englishman who was seeking revenge on her father, Chief Wahan Seneca. So for a moment, I'm rewriting history. I mean, herstory. If it were up to me, Pocahontas would have scalped John Smith and burned his entire village to the ground. She'd be the type of woman who would gag at the current state and alarming rate of missing and murdered Indigenous women, would gag the leaders, make them choke on their words, false promises, and treaties. She would go to school and become a lawyer, and her version of Colors of the Wind would be helping colored women win court cases against those who've assaulted them. She'd become prime minister and president, announcing, yes, indeed, all of the troublemaking immigrants must go back to where they came from, escorting Trump and Trudeau on a one-way plane back to Europe. She'd be the kind of woman to spark those uncomfortable conversations about all the First Nations who have the highest suicide rates in Canada, about how my uncles who drink hand sanitizer and mouthwash to get drunk, as though they are still trying to wash away their mother tongue because they were told that being Indian or speaking Indian was dirty. Pocahontas would be the type of woman that when seeing a girl dress up as her on a crowd or in costume does not lash out, but simply calls her a cab because she knows that if you look like her, you have a walking target on your head. This is my modern day Pocahontas, who I've renamed to Indige Queen. And this is who you can refer to me as if you suddenly feel the urge to label an Indigenous woman powerhouse. Yeah, that's when it all started. Sorry, I was stumbling a little bit. I was like looking at my words as I had written it down, and it's just like, dang, I needed some editing there, but I'm happy to share it. It's always good to look back at older work. Just on that topic, I have another poem, and it's called The Red Road. And this poem speaks to addiction, and it's very prominent in a lot of Indigenous communities or reservations. And I personally have struggled with addiction and alcoholism in my life. And I wanted to shine light on that issue. I was very confused about it growing up, but I didn't understand why we were like this or why I was like this. And it was until I learned about colonization and I learned about residential schools that it was how we survived, and that using that coping mechanism to survive. So I'm going to share two poems, and they kind of both speak to that. So This poem is called The Red Road. Oh, I'm just looking at the time too. Oh no, time's running out as well. All right, I'm going to share this other one actually called Take Them Home. And it speaks to addiction, and it also speaks to um, the children that continue to find at residential schools. And I shared this one online and on YouTube. So in case for people, most people probably did miss it, but um, yeah, I shared that on Orange Shirt Day. So yeah, this one's called Take Them Home. He injects into his trauma. The last 500 years and 5 seconds flash by in chemical romance coursing his blood, his veins, his stomach pains and palms. Touches his bad blood like the priest that touched his childhood that couldn't be purified by holy water, turned it red and reminded it that it too was stolen from the rivers and sacred land of the swampy Cree. This was my grandfather. This was me. It was my aunties, Teresa, Juliette, Marie, my uncles, Furman, Harry, and Lou. It was Tina Fontaine, Colton Bushy, Channy Wenjack, Pocahontas. It was you. And every soul found across that fractured map of separation, labeled as borders, a figment of their imagination and knock off of our creation story. He is the red-skinned Indian they chant about, make souvenirs and hand them out. They want the majestic, spiritual native, the creative, the tomahawk warrior crying headdress chief, the cultural teacher, preacher of the land, not the one with the bottle or needle in his hand, receiving handouts and still. Every child matters on campaign day, but pipelines and apologies are the only actions to date. He was the child that survived, and this is how he's been repaid. Except sorries are not currency. In his culture, you can't pay out or own him. You owe him more than an apology. And they identified him as number 154, had it tattooed underneath his sock, native name erased from memory, vocabulary, walks this street, this block, this 150-year-old country, searching for that rock. Rock bottom is his resting spot. Shkade was his name because they knew he'd have a fire in his throat, would need to spit up his truth, let it burn. Little boy pained and hurt by all the times they told him he'd burn in hell if he didn't clean off the dirt. The brown, repent, but they put fire water down his throat and he's been in hell ever since. This beautiful land, we claim our freedom and pride ourselves in diversity at the expense of his freedom and because of his diversity. Their existence relied on these children's lack thereof. Their backs, a history so bad an unswept rug is burdened with its truth and stamped with reconciliation. But how do we reconcile a relationship that never existed in the first place? God knows you don't need any more stories. So with that, take them home, creator. Take them home. Brown smoky-eyed babies born in cedar baths and smoke medicine wrapped moose hide and buffalo furs. Take them home, creator. Take them home to the place of 1,000 sunrise ceremonies. Sage and abalone shells dance towards the sun. Grandmother Moon gives her teachings about courage, love, and humility, where resiliency isn't a label they gotta learn or have to be. Where the trap line never ends, cement and skyscrapers never touch. Take them home, creator. To the intertribal song, tiny moccasin grass dancing butterflies jump to the drum, connecting Ode to Ike. Make them marvelous leaders in their next lives, creator, because they're not just Canada's dark history or a shameful chapter. They're the eighth fire our prophets predicted, lifted from ashes and smashing stained glasses and taking their braids that were chopped off back. They are healing, pure love. They're here with us because they are us. Thank you. That's my poem in dedication to all the children who attended residential school. My grandparents went to residential school. My grandmother, Mary Louise Morasti. So did my grandfather, Johnny Morasti. And yeah, I had no idea. I knew that they had went there, but because it was so covered up, I didn't learn about it until years later. And it kind of made a lot of sense, just looking at my family and the community, and her trauma and the way she she talked about it, talked about her childhood. So yeah, that we're beginning that healing process, and that's kind of what I speak to at the end, the eighth fire. um, that's us. We're the descendants of, or we're the children of those survivors. And yeah, I'm just grateful that I can use my voice now and yeah, talk about it, because we didn't talk about it for years. And this wasn't that long ago. So yeah, important stuff. I am going to, I'm not too sure about time. It's taking a little bit longer than I had expected. Um, but I I'll share a I'm going to share a love poem, and I'll probably if I'm able to, I'll share two more poems. And um yeah, so this is a love poem, and I'm not I don't usually write love poems, but I because I usually sound very corny, and I've just kind of embraced it, that love is very corny. And um no matter how many times I try to make it sound serious or poetic, it just doesn't come out that way. So I've just embraced it. Anyways, this is a poem for special somebody that I really love and care about. This love scares me, yet makes me feel so safe. An amusement park constructed inside of my rib cage. Butterflies weave, so you pull at my heartstrings with just enough ease. So you've made music in a war zone, and I guess that's why I try to fight it sometimes. But we're safe in here. And I look out fearlessly, unapologetically, poetically, always writing you sonnets and haikus in the back of my mind. And my dreams, we travel through space, time, and the farthest depths of the universe, and still I am home. A soul connection in a world of black screens and eyes glued until we can't see, transmitted through wires and electromagnetic frequency. All I know is that I can't unsee or unfeel this connection. It's as though I've run a marathon in my mind, chasing down every memory and reliving every laugh, embrace, car ride, cuddle, every time spent together. That time we traveled across the country together. Every time you were there when I didn't even want to be there. To be here, I feel like a child sometimes, attached at the hip, afraid of the dark, but you always carry matches in your pockets, so you've always been so smart. I question if our bond and these feelings will ever pass like some sort of summer storm. And then I laugh because we've never been the calm before the storm. We dance in the rain, have always kissed thunder when it comes to visit. And I know I'd be at your doorstep in a minute if you needed your mail. God knows I've written 100 letters for you in my mind, have wrapped each one separately in red ribbon. Sometimes I don't know how to tell you I love you, so I play you my favorite record, seduct you with my vinyl. And I guess this is the part of the poem that I say you make me feel like the sun or the moon or the stars, but in reality, you just make me feel safe. I can't think of any poetic metaphors for that because it's not something I'm familiar with. Sure, our contract is not forever and it is not binding. It is within the seconds and minutes made up of each moment to the next, free to look like and be whatever it wants. And so here we are, drowning in the city of love where everyone would love to drown, as Stevie Nicks would say. I pray we meet in the next life and then the next, again and again, embracing each moment, embracing our little forevers in the city of love. Oh yeah, that's my love poem. Yeah, okay. I'm going to share one more poem, and you've probably all, well, I don't know, I'm just assuming, but this one is the most popular and was submitted to CBC, and we created a video for it. And It's on YouTube. And I really love this poem. This one is called Warrior Cry. And I just feel like when I'm feeling down, which it happens, I just like think of this poem and yeah, it just uplifts me. And it's kind of like a pick me up for myself in those moments. So yeah, so this one is Warrior Cry. Oh, Red Road too. Yeah, sorry guys, I'm just reading the messages as well. Equetch, everyone. All right. I'm the warrior cry that penetrates, swings, slings through your House of Commons window. Not uncommon in my bloodline, though. I'm the high priestess, the empress, grabbing glass ceilings on my way down, turned into a floor, turned to powwow grounds. I dance and stomp on top of shreds of the 1763 Royal Proclamation buried beneath my feet. Jingle dresses and fancy shawls sweep the red-crusted floor. I crow, hop, stop, and point to every door, evicted of opportunity. Every timeline, every generation eradicated. Here is where I stop and pray. I see my own fractured lineage covered up with a band-aid branded reconciliation. My moccasins reveal the mess you made crammed onto reservations. Crucifixes and crying eyes disguised as a friendly Thanksgiving dinner get-together. A dinner reservation we did not make, had no choice in the matter of, painted as a special seat by the door and told to leave before the main course. Leftovers presented on a gold-plated platter and advertised as the special. Starved of culture, freedom, love, life, our children, our world. How special. But my ancestors unshackle us daily, have prayed for us for millennia. I am your Notre Dame turned to flames, the fire starter that won't get out of the house that shamed her, a ceremonial smoke medicine flavor, healing yet spicy. A lyrical physicist transcending truths through time and spaces that I now take up. A felony if you dare touch me, burn hands will remind you that my blood still boils. And land acknowledgements aren't going to fix that. Because acknowledgements without change is like sorry without action. Assaulting the land and bodies of water is an attack on Indigenous women's bodies and communities. This is forced entry to our life givers. Indigenous women nurture our future, feed our babies with ceremony. Babies that grow because of places like Pigeon Lake, the same place where cottagers protest our wild rice monomen for being too thick along the shores for their water skis to get through, of course. The irony of their anger, having something taken away, as though their water sports trump our livelihood and survival. You scream bloody murder and I scream privilege. Tired of being labeled radical because I want clean drinking water for our communities, for Indigenous women and men to be alive, to thrive, yet we're devalued by the blue lives that promise us safety. Tired of being punished because of pigment. But I digress. Indigenous women, the backbone of the body we've abused, holding us together in this rusted, gated, concrete fused skeleton that always call me back to my purpose, my power, my body that's been displaced, my home. I forever owe debt to my grandmothers, mothers, aunties, sisters, and friends. So this one's for you, Miigwech. You. Thanks, everybody. Just being cognizant of the time. I'm not too sure if I should share one more or if we want to leave room for questions. Okay. All right, I'll share one more and then yeah, we can get to the Q&A portion if anybody has any questions for me. So I have one. So I have the one called The Red Road, and that one's more geared towards addiction. I have this other one about healing after a not toxic, out of a trying to heal from a relationship. I think I want to share that one, to be honest, because it's a healing poem, and I feel like it's a good way to end off the show. So this one, yeah, this one is about healing after a breakup. I often find my eyes welling up with salt water in places that can't imagine or fathom the depths of an ocean. That want to hear the frantic siren song, scared of her deepness, darkness, intimidated by the traumatic storms that swept other men ashore. But the ocean knows her power, knows that she is a home, not a house. My shameful turn to healing and medicine. A signal for change, my wet black stained cheeks became my warrior paint. And so I painted our bedroom walls that night. I painted them blue, even though he said they looked better in red, draped with lace, silk, and suppressed sadness. He said I was too needy, emotional, too sensitive, as if an ocean wasn't damaged by the hands of a man, as if being human and hurt weren't the same thing, as if it wasn't my same needy hands that clutched around his bruised, broken body when he needed me to stitch his wounds with my kindness, rubbed his back after carrying all that shame on his shoulders. I keep jumping through hoops for you, hoops made of fire, then act surprised when I burn myself. I need love, respect, acceptance, and so I am no longer the flower from the meadow you handpicked me from when your hands were dirty. Picket fence turned to barbed wire, petals turned to thorns. I am soft yet hard at the same time. I'm magic, a matriarchal manifestation of my ancestors' prayers. Frequency that matches that of a revolution, radiates goddess energy. I laugh with the sun. We joke about the days when I covered my color from her, running from the summer in hopes I would look more like winter, like them, and less like the earth I was birthed from. We laugh, but my melanin isn't a punchline. My skin tells the story of a little girl who grew up too fast. My skin also tells a success story. She tells me that with light and love, I am healing generations that have come before me and that will come after me. My spirit still practices this ritual. I love yous don't always stick to my tongue, yet lips kindly open to the voice of doubt, resulting in sweat. Tear-filled nights of panic, exhaustion, grief, and prayer. I tuck away the 2 a.m. texts, luring my return. I don't give in, and it hurts. I stay, and it hurts, but I also heal. Toes immersed in my power, I let go of the unkind man. I let go of what has happened to me. I let go of the ugly me because that never existed. Those never belonged to me. I baptized myself in the river of surrender, the same ones my ancestors prayed for. This, they said, is called healing. Yeah, thanks everybody. I'm just like, I haven't read a lot of those poems out loud, and I definitely, yeah, there's a lot of the same themes, like goddess energy and frequency and self-love, and yeah, good reminders that actually I really needed that, and I'm happy. Yeah, I sort of started the day off in kind of a rough way, if I'm being honest, but I think this was perfect, and this was so healing, and I'm so grateful for everyone that joined in. You are all, yeah, you are all storytellers yourself, writers, creators. So I encourage you all to do the same and to keep telling your stories. And I'm grateful to be here. So I guess we can do some thanks, guys and gals, folks.
Hey, thank you so much for that, Sarah. That was fantastic. All the poems, so good. I'm so glad I could be here to facilitate this.
I think it froze a little bit.
Oh, do I have a bad connection? Maybe. I hope not.
Not too sure if it's
Hang on. Okay. Okay, so, oh, I think it's on Sarah's end. You're just muted there, Sarah. There you go.
Okay, I
Okay.
was wondering if
I think
you
we're
had
back.
frozen, but I think it was me.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either. um, awesome. Yeah, I was just saying, thanks so much for that. That was amazing. Um, yeah, um, it's so great to have the chance to be able to do this and to host you here as part of Book and Zine. Um, Now we're going to move into the Q&A session. So attendees, everyone who's watching, questions. If you have any questions at all, I encourage you to drop them in the chat, and I can sort of moderate and ask Sarah. Um, I have some interview questions as well. If no one is feeling up to asking a question, I actually wanted to start out with a question about Warrior Cry, one of the poems you read tonight. You performed that in a feature for CBC Arts on their YouTube channel in a video performance. And you're wearing this beautiful regalia and you're incorporating dance as well in that video. I was wondering if you could just give some background on shooting the video and how the visuals in the setting tie into the poem.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I decided to do it last minute. I because of COVID, I didn't get a lot of opportunities to dance at powwow, and I got like this dress and everything, and I'm like, this is perfect timing. I'm like, I get to share my poetry and you know express my culture. And I showed up, and I don't think they were actually expecting me to wear the regalia. They're like, oh my goodness, like this is so like such a blessing, and like we're happy that you did it. And it was actually kind of last minute. um but yeah, I think it ties into it because it's about reclaiming that culture and reclaiming that identity. And it's literally about like an indigenous woman like getting that back. And um even in the poem it says, I dance and stomp on top of shreds of the 1763 royal proclamation. And that's kind of what I was referring to, as like I was imagining like wearing a jingle dress or a fancy shawl dress and doing that. So like putting a visual to it was like perfect for that. And we did it on a bridge, and to be honest it was kind of scary because I was trying to dance on it, but there was like huge spaces between these like um between yeah on the bridge. And anyways, it ended up working out and I didn't fall off, so that was good.
Yeah, that's a great video. Um, Thank you for sharing that. I just have another question just from someone submitted anonymously through the Q&A. They said, Sarah, motherhood has come up in a number of your poems, but I'm wondering, have you composed a poem specifically about being a mother or for dedicated to your son?
I was honestly thinking about that last week, and um I started right. So yeah, I probably should have shared that last poem, but so the poem that I speak to addiction, it was kind of dedicated to my son. And it's just about, you know, there's something called the red road in their culture, and it's just like moving onto the red road, like living a certain way of life without like alcohol and like living those good ways. And anyways, that poem was dedicated to my son and trying to walk that good life and on the red road. I do have a poem that I've made for him, and I haven't actually shared it with anyone because um yeah, I'm still in the process of finalizing it. I'm like, there still needs to be some more things, but yeah, you can definitely in the future, if I have any upcoming shows, which I do. Again, I was also going to say this too. I have a poetry um, gathering on April 1st at Trent University around the fire pit. And I'm still looking for emerging artists or poets that are starting out who are interested. You don't have to be an established or professional poet. Like, it's everyone's a poet. If you have like a body of work that you could fill 15 minutes worth, um, if you follow me on Instagram, or yeah, I'll share my Instagram just in case anyone is interested. That's my Instagram. But there's a link in my bio. If anyone knows any poets or you are interested, feel free to log in there. Yes, anyways, back to your question. I'm gonna probably, yeah, share that poem on, like, dedicated to my son, and like finalize it and have it ready for that gathering.
That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to hearing that or reading that. In that same vein, kind of, you mentioned about the call out for new poets. I was wondering, because you incorporate activism into your work quite a bit, if you had any advice for up and coming poets who also want to incorporate activism into their poetry or into their art or creative process.
Yeah, I think, like I always say, like even in my workshops, it's everybody has a story, and I think if you speak your truth and you tell your story, whatever that is, even if it's um, even if you think that, like, I write my poetry not like what I think people want to hear, but I think like what they need to hear, and using your voice in that way, like that is activism, and that is yeah, that is healing for other people to hear that we're all humans and we can all share like different themes. And um, I think one of the most empowering things, or one of the things that keeps me going when I'm writing poetry, is like when you do write like what you're passionate about, and people come up to you after a show and they're just like, I felt that, and like that really moved me and like spoke to me. That, like, that is what has kept me going. And people can connect, like that's what spoken word is all about, is connection. So yeah, don't be afraid to speak about your passion and what you care about. That's literally like what spoken word is, and like where it originated from was people who were speaking their truth and talking about uncomfortable things in the world that we don't typically talk about. um,
Thank you. Awesome. Well, if anyone else has a question, feel free to cut me off as I'm talking, or just submit it to the Q&A or the chat. But if not, I just want to say thank you to Sarah again so much for coming and performing. It was such a pleasure to have you. And just a reminder, this has been the first event and the first day of our Art Spaces Book and Zine Fest, which will be on until Sunday. We've got two more panels, not like this one. They're discussion panels with 3 speakers each. So the first of those is tomorrow at 7, published Peterborough with Trent Arter, the Absinthe magazine from Trent, and Bird Buried, an independent publisher. And then on Thursday at 7, we have Other Art Criticism with independent publications Off Center, Femme Art Review, and Peripheral Review. So you can find the registration links and further info on our website on the same page that you probably registered for this one. But yeah, thank you for coming. None of this would have been possible without support from, we got support from quite a few places this year: the Ontario Arts Council, Canada Council for the Arts, the City of Peterborough, and the Downtown Peterborough Business Improvement Association, as well as some local businesses, so Watson and Lou, Iceman Video Games, and Black Honey Cafe. So please check them out as well. But that is all from me. That wraps up tonight's event. Thanks everyone again so much for coming, and I hope to see you at the next couple of panels. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bama Peak. Welcome, everybody.